Welcome into One Winning Pod. All right, here it is. The game we've all been waiting for. Not exactly. Ravens, Giants, rematch with Wink. The Giants, who saw this coming when the season started? The Giants are 4-1, while the Ravens are, quote-unquote, only 3-2. However, the Ravens are favored in this game. I believe 5.5 was the last I saw most recently. That line could have changed as we're doing this recording, and we'll find out for certain after this as we do our bets. But, yeah, this is going to be an interesting game. Ravens just had an emotional divisional win over Cincinnati, a much coveted win, so there is a chance for a drop-off there. The Giants are riding high after defeating the Green Bay Aaron Rodgers, and, yeah, we're going to talk about this game. Quick thoughts on this game, guys. What are we looking at here?
I feel like this is the unexpected trap game of the year. Like maybe going into it, we didn't think this was a trap game, but now I would say this might be a trap game. Like you said, the NFC East is actually playing quite well, except for that Laurel team, and they seem to have it more together than people gave them credit for going into the season. So we get the chance to play the Giants and see what we can do.
Oh, that's so interesting because I feel like I have the opposite take after watching a couple of the games. I totally think that, I don't know. I think the Giants have had a cakewalk schedule. I mean, I agree that the Packers game, I think, was probably their biggest win. But, I mean, it's a London game, and to be honest, like, after the Ravens have just, completely crapped the bed playing in London before, I feel like I kind of chalk that up more to the location than anything. Like, and also the Packers have just kind of not been themselves anyway. But, yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel pretty good about our matchup. Obviously, there's some things that, if the Ravens aren't prepared well for, I think that they could do some damage. But overall, yeah, Daniel Jones doesn't really scare me.
Yeah, you look at the teams they've played so far this year. They started out the season beating Tennessee by 1 point. I'm pretty sure that they had a fourth down conversion that they went for there, or maybe it was a 2-point. I don't know. I remember there was some call they made in that game that gave them the win there that was unconventional, at least if you're not John Harbaugh, maybe. But then a 3-point victory over Carolina. We've talked ad nauseum over how Carolina is a disappointment this year. They did lose to Dallas at home on Monday Night Football. Dallas, as we talked about, is a very strong team to start the year. Beat Chicago by 8 and then came from behind to defeat Green Bay in London, a Green Bay team that is very much nowhere near as formidable as in years past. So, yeah, I mean, you just got to play who you can play. But, yeah, you look at those games and those 4 wins, even Green Bay, I would say, like, it's not terribly impressive, but it's still impressive given what we've seen from this Giants team the past few seasons. So I feel like I'm kind of in the middle of you two, but I guess we'll just start out with the first thing we have to talk about with these Giants, because we hinted at it a little bit when we were doing the analysis of the Bengals game. Ravens rushing defense, that's been an issue this year. The Giants, really no playmakers on offense outside of Saquon Barkley. He is back. He looks great, and it's going to be the key to this game. The number one key, at least, is the Ravens are going to need to stop Saquon Barkley when the Giants have the football, because he is the one guy that could take over this game for the Giants and keep them really competitive in this matchup.
Yeah, he looks so good. I mean, he's running with power. He's able to run in between the tackles, outside the tackles. He's also a weapon in the screen game and the passing game. And there was that ridiculous play, I think, where he took a dump off screen. I think it was against the Cowboys, if I recall, and basically avoided a tackle, which would have been a 5-yard loss or something, and then was able to skirt around the left side and then pick up 20, 25 yards or something. It was insane play, really athletic play. Like you said, Peter, I think out of all the guys on this offense, I think he's one that scares me the most. But that being said, the Giants have other options, I think, that they can use to be able to move the chains. I think Alec kind of called it out in the notes in that they really run a very methodical offense. They're not going to hit you with big plays to be able to make a 50-yard pass or something. They're going to run the ball a lot, They're going to hit it up with short passes to tight ends, to receivers, just little 6 to 10 yard kind of passes to be able to move the chains and keep things going and eventually grind you down. So, one thing I kind of noticed from watching some of the film earlier is that Chicago was one team that they overcommitted so hard to Barkley that they just let everything else get behind them. And honestly, it was horrible to watch. It was guys are just missing assignments and just letting guys get open. It just is frustrating to see how much they just didn't respect Daniel Jones in the passing offense. So, I wanted to throw that out there of Saquon definitely number one weapon on this team. We got to have a plan for him, but also don't forget about everybody else, because that is what's going to break the Ravens this Sunday if they're not able to stop drives from happening.
Yep, the way I put it was this offense wants to live to die another day. They're definitely living by the constraints that they have with a Daniel Jones-led offense. But I think in a way they're playing it smart. They're giving him nice schemed plays, just keeping it simple, letting playmakers get the ball in their hands and do things. I think they much rather get a series of short yardage gains that keep the sticks moving than get one big play on you. I don't think they ask much. Like I said, the offense is just pretty bland. And that could be something the defense can exploit for sure. But the way that they seem to want to win is by being more methodical and play with a higher execution than the other side. Let you make the mistakes first.
Yeah, definitely. I do agree with that. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to this new coaching staff that's there. Brian Dabble, I believe that's how you say his name. I could be wrong. With the mentality that he's come in here with, it kind of reminds me of when John Harbaugh came into Baltimore in 2008. He's come in here and he's basically given everyone a clean slate. If it doesn't matter if you're highest paid player on the team, looking at you, Kenny Golladay, you got to earn your spot. And if you don't practice hard, you're not going to go out there. And I think that's something that's really, without being in the locker room, obviously, you got to look at that, and that has to be playing into the mentality of this team. Some of the guys that they have out there that Daniel Jones is throwing to, Richie James, David Stills, Daniel Bellinger, they're, when compared to their NFL peers, they're not super skilled, they're not ultra athletic, but you've got a coaching staff here that's saying we're new here, show us what you got. And it seems to be just whoever takes the reins, they're going to give them a chance. And I think if that's something that, if we're looking at how the Giants could steal this game from the Ravens, I still think it would be steal, because as good as their record is through the first 5 games, on paper, the Ravens have more talent. That's it. But coaching can make a huge difference, especially when you're talking about, we're splitting hairs here as far as comparing the different levels of players you have in this league, of the best football players in the world. And that's going to be something the Ravens have to make sure they don't underestimate. We saw what happened against Miami when Miami made more second half adjustments and came out with more fight in the second half of that game than the Ravens seemed to expect. So, yeah, the coaching angle here, I think, is what is helping this offense be methodical and stay in these games, despite the fact that their talent on paper is underwhelming, honestly.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Another kind of area where I think, the talent maybe kind of isn't, at par, at least yet. Although it's not a failure, I think, of the drafting, but offensive line, I think there's some guys that are pretty good. Andrew Thomas, left tackle, I think is probably one of their best offensive linemen that they have in the group. John Feliciano, I think he used to play for the Bills a couple of years ago. He's their center. He's pretty good. Outside of that, you have Ben Bredesen, former Raven. He's playing okay.
My guy.
And one guy I kind of wanted to talk about who, I think would be really interesting for some of the players on the Ravens is Evan Neal. I think he was It's a top
Yeah,
10 draft pick.
Yep,
top
draft
10.
pick.
I don't remember exactly which slot, but yeah, he was a high draft pick, tackle out of Alabama, if I recall. And boy, his tape looks pretty rough. Playing on the right side, he just, he was having a lot of issues, particularly against the Packers game, the Cowboys game. I mean, he led up, I think, 3 sacks to Lawrence, I believe. I mean, if I'm the Ravens and I'm looking at that, like Odafe Owe, like put him over there. Like, please let him feast, get some sacks. Like, that's a big opportunity there, I think, that the Ravens could exploit.
Yeah, I agree with you, what you're saying. The offensive line is definitely, as a group, it seems to be on the rise from what they've had recently. Andrew Thomas, it's really cool to see him develop into where he is right now. I remember when we were doing our breakdowns of the 2020 draft class, interior lineman was a position that we looked quite extensively at when we were preparing for those podcasts, obviously due to the retirement of Marshall Yanda, and we knew that the Ravens were going to try and fix that hole in some way through the draft. And for those episodes, I remember, we all split up the position groups, and interior lineman was one of the ones that I had. And when Thomas was coming out, I believe he either was a guard at Georgia or he was between a guard and a tackle, because I know that he was being projected to play tackle at the NFL level. The scouts were saying that. And I remember looking at that and I was like, this is the guy from the draft. There's no way that he falls to the Ravens, but like this guy looks legit. And I know he struggled a little bit his rookie year, but it's cool just to see him come into his own from that perspective, just as like, hey, that was a guy that we were looking at and we knew the Ravens wouldn't get him, but we saw the tape and we're like, that guy, yeah, he looks promising. We were by far not the only ones who saw that. So yeah, he's definitely become an anchor for the Giants offensive line. But yeah, the rest of it does seem like, that the rest of the unit, they'll make good plays, and then there's other times they struggle. I saw the same thing you saw with Neil, with Chris, with what I was able to watch. And I paid a little bit of close attention to Bredesen as well. Watched some film from both the Cowboys game and the Packers. Seemed to play better against the Packers from my perspective. With him being a little undersized, he's going to have the same issues that Linderbaum has from time to time, just, with the nature of what his physique is compared to the defensive lineman he's trying to guard. But yeah, I mean, it's a unit that is something that the Ravens defensive line should be able to have a good day against, but at the same time, you could see them have a plan in place, because there's certainly a lot of raw young talent here, and they're on the path to putting a solid unit together.
Yeah, I think by far their run blocking, I think is definitely their strength. As we step with Saquon, it's just he's been playing great. Pass protection, yeah, I think it can be up and down, and I think the coaching staff has kind of adapted to that. Like one of the kind of key strengths of the Giants offense, they do a lot of play action, a lot of bootlegs. Get Daniel Jones in space. Everyone likes to say he's kind of got shifty athleticism and speed. I think it was last year he had like the longest run for a quarterback in the league, and which was surprising. But yeah, it's one of their staples of their offense. They do it a lot. And again, like somehow defenses still don't expect it. They overcommit to Saquon and just let Daniel Jones run free or run out and make a pass while the defense is flowing the other way. So it's something they're dealing with, and they've been successful. And again, like that's the formula. Like if you have a defense that doesn't respect all of the options, that's how you have drives that take up a lot of clock on the clock. Eventually win the game. It's kind of surprising like how basic of an offense it is in some ways, but it really is successful. It has been the last couple of weeks. So yeah, I mean, I definitely expect them to kind of do a lot of that stuff. And I think for Mike Macdonald and the Ravens, like you got to be able to cover all that stuff. Don't underestimate them. I know that they're 4-1, but from some of the film, like it definitely seems more basic. But don't be the Bears, don't be the Packers. Like don't sleep on that stuff, because they can do some damage and hurt you and take up that time of possession.
After the Cincinnati game, we were able to see the Ravens a bit the Ravens' ability to rally to the ball and cut down on yards after the catch. And I think that's going to be the formula against this offense as well. As far as the pass rush goes, I'm curious if the trend will continue with people who play the Ravens getting the ball out at a remarkably fast rate. And if so, it might be another difficult day for that unit just because they can't possibly get home that fast. So I'll keep an eye out on that. It might just be a thing that people are doing against the Ravens defense. Of course, maybe they'll feel a little bit more comfortable letting longer routes develop because they might see a vulnerability with our safeties, with Geno Stone back there or Hamilton, whoever it is, because it's not Marcus Williams. But I kind of doubt it. I kind of think that people are going to stick to the same game plan against us despite that major loss to the defense.
For sure, yeah. And if they do try and challenge that, a wild card in this matchup is Darius Slayton, a guy who fantasy football players know had a promising back end of the 2019-2020 season, and then has kind of been struggling to reclaim that since then. He had one of his best games, I mean, really his best game statistically since 2020 against Green Bay. 6 catches on 7 targets for 79 yards, including a 26-yarder, which was his longest reception of the game. With Sterling Shepard out and Kenny Golladay in some just following the Allen Robinson career trajectory here, Slayton has an opportunity to take over and be the wide receiver 1 for this team, and he was able to do it against Green Bay. We'll see if that was an outlier or if maybe this new coaching staff has found a way to get him back on track. So definitely watch out for him. And I know Richie James has dropped off a bit since being a bit of a surprise the first 2 weeks, but he's another guy who has speed. They could use him as a threat to stretch the field. So there's definitely guys that they can use. They're just not to the caliber of playmakers that the Ravens have had to face against, the Dolphins and the Bills and the Bengals. So it's a different type of offense that they're going to be going up against.
If you look at the recent draft history, I know that the regime's changed, but they did actually spend a decent amount of capital on wide receivers between Kadarius Toney last year and Wan'Dale Robinson this year. I know there's been a lot of injuries with those guys, a lot of week to week. Is it time for them to step up? Are they going to be able to play? And at the time of recording, I think we're still unsure of those two guys and their ability to come out. So I'm kind of curious to see what their passing attack looks like once those guys are in, because it's definitely high talent levels. It might change the way they approach things.
Yeah, and the thing with this wide receiver corps, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about this coaching staff asking these guys to prove it. It feels like every week this year, and some of it is because of injuries, and some of it also, at least from what's being reported in the Giants media, is just coming down to it seems like, particularly with the wide receiver group, this coaching staff is making decisions on who's atop the depth chart based on how practice is going. Guys like Kadarius Toney, like you're saying, has been buried on the depth chart a little bit, partly due to injury, and if we're to believe it, some of the practice as well. So it's hard to say, does this coaching staff feel sold on Toney? They certainly seem to like Shepard. They wanted to feature Shepard. We saw that in the Dallas game, but then unfortunately for them, he's out for the year. So, but again, like we said, Darius Slayton came out of nowhere last week against Green Bay, hadn't done anything all season, has a big game. For all we know, Toney could come out and just light it up like he did against the Cowboys last year around this time. Who knows? Maybe Kenny Golladay resurrects from wherever he is and scores 4 touchdowns.
No.
I highly, highly doubt that that's going to happen. But with this wide receiver corp that they're throwing out there, expect the unexpected.
Yeah, for sure. The Ravens front seven is going to have to step up in a lot of ways. One of the things I noticed with the Cowboys game was that the Cowboys' inside linebacker play, I think, was pretty good. They did a fairly decent job of stopping Saquon in certain situations, except for that, one of the plays that I mentioned earlier. But yeah, I mean, I know we've talked a lot about our inside linebacker play and just being able to stop the run. It's going to be a challenge for sure. Like you said, Peter, it's something that they haven't really seen too much of. Obviously, facing teams like Miami and Buffalo, those are not running teams. Very much built on the pass. I feel like I said this a few weeks ago with the Patriots, where I could definitely see a scenario in which they don't win this game. But that said, I think there's a lot to realize that we don't have to be afraid of the Giants' offense. As long as we execute very well, I think our offense matches up very well with their defense.
Well, let's talk about that defense. So, as we already discussed at the outset of this episode, and I'm sure as many who are listening to this remember, the Giants have a new defensive coordinator. It's our old friend Wink. He's come in there and helped this unit to get off to, what we can describe as a solid start. They're not by any means overpowering opposing offenses, but they're getting the job done. A little bit of up and down, and at least keeping the game close. I think the same thing that we're saying about the offense is kind of the same thing we can say about the defense. They're getting to their assignments correctly. They're doing what they need to do to be a team that can win games, but not doing it in a flashy manner, not doing it in a manner that is really standing out a huge amount when you take a step back and look at the whole landscape of the NFL. But again, it's led to a 4-1 record. It's led to them staying in games, and the defense was the reason that they were able to hold on against the Packers in London. They shut out the Packers offense in the second half and had that stand in the red zone to end the game, where they had back-to-back batted passes on the final 2 plays of regulation to clinch that win against the Packers. So it's an intriguing group from that perspective. Certainly, again, you look at the roster of players here, and there's not many names that really pop out as star players, but overall a solid group, and Wink's got them in a good spot, I think.
It's Wink, man. You watch it definitely looks like Wink. They did the cover 0 a couple times. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I'm very curious to see if he even attempts to blitz Lamar, knowing his success rate against the blitz this year. But I don't know if they'll necessarily have to. I think they have some pieces on their line that are pretty good. They got maybe the top guy in the draft, according to Jason's board and many others, of Thibodeau. But they did also lose 2 big pieces in Ojulari and Leonard Williams. So kind of a little bit of a back and forth there. They also have the familiar faces, Jihad Ward and Justin Ellis are up there. It's like Wink light. I'm curious, we'll see any Tony Jefferson. It's interesting to see what the approach is, because Wink knows our offense the best of any coordinator,
Yeah, for sure. Alec, actually, I couldn't remember, but I know Ojulari and Leonard Williams didn't play last week, but I don't know if we had confirmation if they're playing this week. I know it's a little early in the week, so we haven't seen the injury report, but I didn't see anything to say that theirs were long-term injuries, so there might be a chance that they might be back. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a lot familiar, but I do, I think the big difference, at least that what I've seen, is that Wink's got some outside linebackers who can really rush. Ojulari and Thibodeau, both of those guys are really freaking good. I think maybe to Peter's point, they're still ascending, right? They're not like the Micah Parsons of the league yet. But what I saw in some of the games that I was watching, they could do some damage on their own. Dexter Lawrence as well from the interior, I think, can do a lot of damage. Leonard Williams is there too. I think those are all legitimate guys who can get after the quarterback and make some plays, so that Wink doesn't have to send the house all the time. He can actually rush 4 or 5, and things will actually get home. But yeah, we'll see. I know the Giants have kind of suffered a lot from injuries, both on the offense and defense. So we'll have to wait later in the week to kind of see who's available. But all I can say is if Thibodeau's playing, I think he is definitely an X factor for this game. The Ravens got to figure out how to contain him, because I think he's got the moves to be able to get to Lamar, and he's got the speed to be able to chase him down.
Thibodeau is still waiting for his first career sack, although he has defended 3 passes so far in his NFL career. I agree with what you're saying, Chris. The stats don't show the whole story there. And he's certainly, when you watch him on the film, he's working. He's making the offensive line work. They're wings lining him up in different spots along the line. And he looks like a guy who it's going to click eventually. It's not fully there yet, which is understandable, as it's only 5 games into his NFL career. And sometimes, it feels like in this Twitter age, it's like if a player's not all pro after 1 game, we're writing them off. But there's definitely some guys here that can give the Ravens a fit from pass rush. Great call there, bringing up Dexter Lawrence. If you got an interior lineman, you're going against an interior lineman who already has 3 sacks on the season through 5 games. You got to make sure that your interior guys are keeping that guy at bay, because that's always something that can disrupt a passing attack. Now, of course, Lamar would have the speed to outrun him, but Dexter Lawrence and Thibodeau, those are 2 guys that the offensive line is definitely going to have to keep an eye on when Lamar's back to pass.
It's funny, Peter, you mentioned just like, players who may take a little bit wild to kind of like show up on the stat sheet and everything. And then I feel like you're not, the fan base gets upset. Totally unrelated, because we're not really even playing this opponent this year, but it was just something that I noticed when I was watching the Cowboys-Giants game. Micah Parsons, man. Like, he was a no-show for me, like, watching the replay of that. And he's a guy that last year, like, blew up the league as a rookie. But I was watching that whole game, and I'm like, Dexter Lawrence, sure. Saw him doing a lot of damage. Or, I'm sorry, DeMarcus Lawrence. But Micah Parsons, I was like, I didn't really see him stand out at all. So, obviously it kind of goes to your point of just, people having short memories and not having the context of, a player's career and kind of watching the tape and stuff. But yeah, it was kind of funny. I think another thing that I saw, I think it was pretty obvious in the Packers game, at least for me. I think a secondary for the Giants does a really good job of tackling. They don't let guys get too far, out of their reach. And then when, the receivers did make any catches, they were right there on them. And it was like solid tackling. There wasn't any like shoestring tackles or anything. It was like, we're going to give you what you give you, and you're not going to get too much yak. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting. And I feel like, in the secondary, that one of the names I think that jumped out to me, Adoree Jackson, he used to play for Tennessee. He's an interesting piece there. I know that they've got some safeties as well who, can definitely play. I'm interested to see, how they match up with the Ravens, though. It just, good point from Jackson. Like, when he played in Tennessee, I feel like Lamar kind of picked on him a little bit. So, there's a little bit of familiarity there, and maybe, Jackson might have some, tricks up his sleeve to kind of be able to deal with this. But I'm just interested, especially, if Bateman's not going to be able to play, who are our guys going to be? Are they going to be able to get some separation and make some plays down the field? We had some trouble with that against the Bengals. I'm kind of curious if we're going to see about the same as what we saw, or are we going to get some other things figured out? Mark Andrews also, just how does he match up with the secondary? Who are they going to put on him? All interesting questions.
Yeah, I'm curious if it'll be Xavier McKinney. He was one of the safeties we liked in the draft process. I'm curious to see how they line it up. I guess when it comes to the secondary, it's funny, man, with Wink being there. He's, like we said at the top, he's doing the zero blitzes. He's trusting the fact that they're going to handle the back end. Is that trust earned at this point? Guys like Adoree Jackson, maybe he's making him feel confident in it. Maybe he feels confident because we talked about some of those edge rushers with Thibodeau and just the ability to get after the quarterback. He feels, when you bring numbers and you have the talent, it's going to work out. I'm just, like I said, I don't think that's the formula against the Ravens. So I think it could really bite him just because of the talent we have. So I'm curious if he'll adjust, or we'll see what happens there. Because when you do zero, right, you man up against the wide receivers, right, or the route runners. And if you man up and you turn your back to Lamar Jackson, he might be able to sneak out. And then it could be a big gain. So that's risky business. Yeah. I mean, I know 0 got us before, but it didn't get us this year so far.
Yeah, the Ravens had a lot of answers for the Dolphins in week 2 when then they did 0 blitz. And, to your point, I didn't get a chance to look into the film of how the Cowboys were able to have their second half comeback win over the Giants as much as I would have liked to. But in just looking at some of it, the scheme that blitzes they were doing, particularly they had some trouble with some nickel blitzes with the nickel cornerback. We know how the Ravens had some issues with that last year. In the drive where CeeDee Lamb got his touchdown, I believe, there were several instances where Lamb was able to break free in the slot just due to the guys who are supposed to pick him up just not able to transition in time. And we saw last year what can happen with a Wink defense if you're running guys out there who aren't ready for that scheme or just aren't the ideal players to have in that situation. So what does that look like for the Ravens? How can they take advantage of the parts of Wink's scheme that always made us, pull our hairs out of our head at times? And, it's going to be, I think we could see another big game out of Duvernay. I think that this is another spot where he could have some success. Mark Andrews, I don't see the linebackers on this team particularly adept to be able to cover him. So I think, again, you're looking at another week where both those guys should get a lot of targets and have opportunities for Yak. And I think that if the Giants do that 0 blitz, Lamar's going to lock into Andrews or lock into Duvernay, and I think they should be able to get some chunk plays there.
I know for me, I'm definitely looking forward to see how the run game progresses. I know the Ravens have kind of had a few running back draw plays, a little bit more than usual, and that's a kind of a good technique to be able to take advantage of blitzing defenses. So I think that'll be really good. There were a few plays like that. I want to say from the Cowboys game where they were doing maybe not the same sort of running back draw plays, but they were doing kind of these like quick dump offs, screens or something, and being able to take advantage of that and be able to get blockers out in front. A few halfback tosses as well over like around the left side, I think. So those are pretty successful. Thinking that might be an element here as well. If that's what Wink wants to do, I'm sure the guys, coaching staff right now is going in there and be like trying to do some reverse psychology of like, oh, what does Wink think we're going to do? What do we think he's going to do? But I think there are answers. I am a little bit worried, at least on the passing side, depending on Bateman's status. If we're talking about the Miami game, I think he was a big reason of, he was a guy who could beat that man coverage and actually take advantage of it. I think Duvernay can do a little bit of that. I do think that, Roman's done a good job of kind of scheming guys open a little bit. So on one-on-one situations where a guy just needs to get open, I'm a little bit more worried about that because we just don't have a lot of guys who could do that, other than Andrews, really. But that being said, I think there are other ways to kind of take advantage of this. I think the run game is probably the big one. And from what we saw with, adding Stanley back, I think, he could have some success. I think Dobbins continues to get stronger. He wants to be fed. So this would be a great game for, just an awesome game for Dobbins if he could just take over this game. I think that would help slow down a lot of the rushing that Wink might want to do.
I think you bring up a great point there. I would love to see the Ravens go back to those really late draw plays that they were doing against the Bills. I think that's an excellent point, and I think that would work great against Wink's scheme. So hopefully that's something we can see. And let's see a little bit more of Duvernay as Debo Light. We're screaming for that all last year. Finally got a couple plays of that against the Bengals. It worked well. Let's see them expand on that. Hopefully that's not just a 1 week thing. Because just get the ball into Duvernay's hands. He's ready to play this year, and that's only something that can keep the defense more off balance. So yeah, the running game is also going to be huge. The Ravens offensive line is getting healthier. I think you can still have a good rushing attack against these Giants. So,
all right. So I guess with all of that being said, let's start off with our bold predictions.
Yeah, I think I'll go first. I just love what we're seeing week to week from Duvernay. Just every week he's building it from the previous week. Like I said, we saw him run the ball a little bit this past week. He had an opportunity for a big touchdown pass. Unfortunately, Lamar overthrew him. I'm going to predict over 100 yards, all-purpose scrimmage yards for Duvernay, not including special teams returns. Just on the offense.
I was going to say, that would be too
that
easy.
would no longer be a bold prediction if I included that, which would be a career high for him. So I'm going to say Duvernay's able to do that on Sunday.
I think I'll go up next. I don't know. Like I said at the top, I'm not super scared of this Giants offense. I think the Ravens defense could provide some wrinkles here. I'm gonna say they keep up their turnover streak. I'm gonna say that they get at least 2 turnovers off Daniel Jones.
That's awesome. I think my bold prediction is going to be that Oweh is going to be inspired by what we talked about this game. I was talking about so highly of Thibodeau, and he's going to go and get 2 sacks on Danny Dimes.
Nice.
As far as score prediction goes, man, Ravens are favored by 5. The over-under is 45 points. So they're 25, and Giants are 20. 20 feels rich for the Giants, given the way that their offense plays and the way I think our defense can match up. 25 for the Ravens, that sounds about right. I just don't have confidence in this offense being able to just produce, drive in, and drive out. They haven't quite hit that stride yet. I think it's going to be an under game. I think 24-13 feels reasonable, something like that. I think it's going to be boring. Like, this is not the game to watch if you're not a Ravens fan, is my guess. Like, maybe Lamar will make some good plays, but that's a highlight reel, you know? Like, the actual game itself, I don't expect that much fun.
Yeah, you called the first game of the season at the Jets. Same score.
I like my numbers, man.
Same score, same field, same...
I did 31 points in 3 games in a row as the amount that the Ravens scored.
Oh, man, it is the same field, isn't it? Ugh.
It is the same field.
Yeah, we didn't really want to talk about that.
The field
Just
aspect.
get up and get out of there, man.
Totally. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I don't like this game, man. I wouldn't want to give up an L to it because it feels like an easy dub and we need it. But like, playing on that field sucks. It should be illegal.
Oh man, it is interesting. I don't know enough. Is there like a certain? There has to be a standard that these fields have to be up to some degree, whether it's grass or turf. I don't know enough about field upkeep in the NFL to know if that's a thing or not, but it feels like they either need to implement that if it's not there or up the standards for that based on what we've seen from that field in particular. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just go right after you because I have a similar feel for this game. Excited to watch it because it's a Ravens game, but it's shaping up to be an ugly one. I'm going to go with a similar score prediction. I think 27-10 Ravens. I think this Giants team is on the ascendancy, but if the Ravens are able to score in the second half of this game, they should be able to pull away. That's an if, as we've seen from the past 2 weeks, but I'll give the Ravens the win here. Man,
you had to say that. Now you're bringing my really bold score prediction back to earth, Peter. Because you're right. Oh, man. I mean, they scored in the second half against the Bengals, but what? 9 points? 3 field goals? I don't remember. 2 field goals, 3 field goals. Oh, gosh. I don't know, man. Like, the Giants are playing good football. I think they're pretenders, though. Their schedule's just a cakewalk. I mean, I do not see this being a competitive game. I think the Ravens have just got too much talent to let this thing be close. I guess we'll do the picks episode shortly. It'll come out later this week. We'll figure out what the line is, but I'm feeling a blowout, man. I really don't know. I really don't believe in the Giants right now. I'm gonna go 31-10 Ravens, which is pretty crazy considering that, I picked the Bengals to win last week. So,
well, all of us think the Ravens will cover. It's a beautiful thing. Place your bets. Go get some easy money. Let's go. Speaking of bets, you can find our bets on the YouTube channel. We'll be recording that shortly after this. And as far as the YouTube channel, a lot of cool things might be coming this week. I don't want to tease it too soon, but I think in a couple days I'll be doing an interview, which I'm very excited about. And yeah, it'll probably just show up. And we'll talk about it after the fact if it happens. So definitely subscribe if you haven't already. Peter, what's coming up in History Corner?
It's going to be good. I'll say that much. I'm playing around with 2 topics, one of which is the one I'd rather do, but will require a little more research. I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to do this week. So I don't want to put up, false expectations there, but it'll be up. It'll be interesting. And yeah, appreciate those of you who've been giving it a view. These first couple weeks we've been doing it. It's content I've found interesting. I only put out stuff that I would be interested in listening or reading myself. So yeah, if you like obscure Ravens history that relates to coming matchup, look out for that Friday mornings on our YouTube channel.
It's definitely the most popular thing on the YouTube channel so far, so seems like everyone does like it. You can find us on Twitter @OneWinningPod. You can email us onewinningpod@gmail.com. Go Ravens, beat them Giants, and we'll talk to you next week.